This podcast is made with the support of New Zealand On Air. A warning: this series contains strong language and features themes of sexual abuse, as well as explicitly sexual material and mention of suicide. Please take care. Episode 1, Jane.
Yeah, I feel like I'm rotten. I feel like that it happened to me because I deserved it, because there's some part of me that's rotten.
Well, in fact, I didn't think I had to worry about anything because I thought she was safe. She was in a church group that, she had friends and, I thought I was lucky that I wasn't going through all those other things I'd gone through with some of the others.
There was a bag of jelly beans. I remember Jane and I making a heart shape out of jelly beans on the bed, and then I left them to have some alone time. But that was all unbeknownst to anyone else, and certainly a secret from the other leaders at the camp that he had her in that room. And I just would say to myself, I was a child.
This is a story about a girl called Jane, who was 13 years old when she joined a Presbyterian youth group in Auckland.
It feels really nice to be in a place of belonging and acceptance and no judgment, and it's fun being able to mix with older kids and have them think you're really cool, and everyone's always saying nice things about you, and it's just like a really positive environment at first.
By the end of the following year, she was in a secret sexual relationship with the youth group leader, a man in his mid-20s whose family was deeply respected within the church, who was trusted by everyone around him.
What I can tell you is that he was very charismatic, very youthful, very funny, had a lot of time for everyone. He liked to joke around a lot, and so he had this sort of really young spirit to him. I don't think I necessarily felt an attraction to him physically, but I felt an attraction to him personality-wise, like he was just a magnetic personality.
3 decades on, Jane is ready to revisit that relationship and speak to the people who were there at the time. We'll also talk to experts, a psychologist and a lawyer, and we're going to approach the man involved and eventually hear from someone at the top of the church. But first, Jane wanted someone to help her tell her story. My name's Noelle McCarthy. I'd met Jane a few times over the years, and she knows I make podcasts. A few months ago, we started to try to piece together that story, to understand what really happened and how it's affected her life for the last 30 years. This is Dear Jane, a series in 5 parts from the Spinoff.
Jane, what's wrong? I hope it has nothing to do with jelly beans. Talk to me tonight. I'll see if I can go with whoever.
Jane has kept a trove of letters from her early teenage years. A lot of the details are everyday stuff. We're not talking high drama here. How was your week at school? My week was really stink, as per usual. But they do give us a window into a very private world.
We were all talking yesterday about guys. All my friends and I think that once guys have had sex once, that is all they ever want. They will use anyone to get it. You may not think that this is true with Christian guys, but look at... I'm sorry, but that is just what I think if you disagree with me.
These letters are kind of amazing. The one we're listening to now...
Danielle, tape the Jackson 5 for me. It's such a cool tape.
Appears to have been painstakingly put together on a typewriter.
My favourites are Ben and ABC. It's amazing.
Others have Forever Friends bears on the stationery and Anne Geddes babies pretending to be butterflies or sitting in buckets with flowers on their heads. Remember those?
Dear Jane.
Mostly, though, they're notes on thin sheets of A4 paper folded into 4 or 6 or 8 squares. All the better to be easily, discreetly passed along a row of desks. And some of them are beautifully illustrated, decorated with glitter and stickers and coloured stamps and intricate drawings in brightly coloured felt pens.
I know that this is a really short and boring letter, but I have to go now. See ya. From your friend forever, Jane.
I feel like I was just starting to figure out what I was into. Like I was kind of straddling the line between being really into mainstream regular stuff, like, you know, I did home fashion shows, to Right Said Fred's I'm Too Sexy, and like I learned all the words and harmonies to Mr. Big's To Be With You. But I was also starting to branch out to like Pearl Jam and The Cure. But I was definitely a nerd. Like I remember Aladdin came out that year and I loved singing A Whole New World. I loved mince and cheese combos from Georgie Pie, and I was obsessed with stationery, felt pens, you know, especially like glittery ones or whatever. Like it was my dream to work at Paper Plus after school.
What were you like around the time when you first met him?
When I was 13, I was boy crazy. I was new to a big all-girls school, having grown up in a suburban primary school that went up to Form 2, which is the equivalent of Year 8. And so I went from being kind of like a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a very big, intimidating pond at this all-girls school. But I was making new friends at school, but I was also I was absolutely your average 13-year-old. I was really interested in boys and what my first kiss might be like, and you know, starting to like giggling about sex and that kind of thing with my girlfriends, writing a lot of letters.
Dear Jane, it's third period and I'm in social studies. We're getting our tests back. I bet I failed. We're all depressed, so don't ask anyone how they are. Michelle is depressed because her and Evan haven't done. Dawn is depressed because of Aaron, and also because Sarah is depressed because she dislocated her knee, and is I'm depressed because of everything. Because of me. I don't know why I do the things I do.
This is pre the internet, so my girlfriends and I, who went to different schools, in fact, even some of the girls I was at the same school with, we just wrote letters to each other constantly.
Dear Jane, well, it's yonks later now, study's nearly over. I have drama, then English. I guess your school had their half-day Wednesday. We had ours yesterday. For your valuable information, I will be at soccer tomorrow. Gotta go. Tons of love. Me. P.S. I need to go to the loo. P.P.S. Jenny has chewing gum stuck to her shoe.
Dear Ange, I miss you already. Last night church was really good. Doing the prayer and having people congratulate me made me feel like I belong. Ugh, gotta go. Belle's gone. Love, Jane.
And you mentioned that you got into youth group through one of your sisters.
Yes, so my eldest sister was a leader at a youth group. And I think actually, you know, it would have been her dream for me to head along. We've always been very close, her and I. And I think a boy that I fancied was going casually to this youth group.
Dear Ange, I really like him. I've waited so long for him, for someone to like me. I would be so annoyed if Chantal tries to get with him, or anyone.
He was my age. He was in third form as well, and he was a very good-looking young guy. I'd caught sight of him at his school's like fashion modelling show. Then found out he went to this youth group, and I was like, okay, I'm in. They're going to Waiwera Hot Pools. I think I'll have to be there for that.
So they used to have like, what is it, like trips to places?
Yeah, there was the Friday night sort of Bible study element, which was also social as well. But then they would reasonably frequently have, I guess, like field trips out to Hot Pools or the cinema, or, you know, going to a cafe or something like that.
By the time you met the man we'll call Dan, were you kind of well established at the group? Like, were you going frequently? Had you spent time there?
He was the main leader, so he was there from the very beginning, from the very first time that I went. And how the group operated was there was the main leader.
Okay, guys, listen up, please.
And
Let's
then
pause for a second. Okay.
we would start the night all together.
We're going to break off into two groups now.
And it was teenagers, you know, from, I guess, 13 to 18, 19.
Hang around here.
And then beyond that, you started to be a leader yourself,
We're going
probably.
to take about half an hour, then we'll we'll come back down, meet up together, and we'll close in prayer for the evening.
And did it always meet in the evenings? Like, was it an evening time?
Yeah, always Friday nights.
All right. Okay, off you go, Rose.
Saturday night would usually be, if there was some sort of a trip or something, it would be on a Saturday night. And then there was the church service on Sunday, which was, there was the more traditional, all the old people's version of church in the morning, you know, with the hymns and, you know, very, very classic Presbyterian stuff. And then in the evening time, the drum kit came out and the electric guitar came out. We had like a more of a youth focus.
What kept you going to the group? You know, as someone who wasn't necessarily religious, not into it, was it the boys? What?
No, it wasn't the boys, Noelle, funnily enough, because that boy that I originally went for didn't keep going. And there were no other really hot boys there. I kept going because I started going with my best friend, Angela.
Angela. Remember that name. She'll be an important part of this story.
And we both found a community there. We both found people were really nice to us. They did fun things. I had I made a group of friends there that I didn't have at school.
I asked Jane how her relationship with Dan started.
How it first began was I remember, I don't know if I was dating, but I was kind of starting to see a boy who was older. I was 13, he was 16.
Had you kissed him? Had you kissed a boy at this stage?
I had kissed one boy at this stage. At some point, Dan must have become a confidant, which probably should have been a bit of a red flag to begin with, but I didn't know what red flags were. And so I remember telling him about what had happened. I can't remember if he asked or if I just volunteered the information, but I do remember that he basically expressed jealousy and kind of like, oh, you know, I shouldn't be saying this, but that makes me a bit sad because I actually have feelings for you. And I don't think I expected that. But I know it would have made me feel really, really special and excited.
Dear Ange, I'm in science now. Guess what I can't stop thinking about? It was fun and intense. Belle's going to go any minute. Might come and see you today. Cool, eh?
So at what point did you guys sort of get together? Like, where was the first kiss?
It would have been in his car, where many of our physical interactions were. It was after youth group. He used to drive a few of us home, and I would always be last to be dropped off, so that no one would suspect anything. And we'd just sit and talk. And then one time there was a kiss.
P.S. Do not show this to anyone. Do not tell any of the others about this.
What was it like in terms of, you know, did he tell you to keep it secret, Jane? Did he say, like, let's not talk about this, or?
I mean, he didn't even have to tell me to keep it secret. Like, it was obvious that it had to be secret.
How did you know?
Because he was 11 years older than me and he was my youth group leader. That much I knew. But I was falling in love with him. So, to me, I was like, love is the most important thing. Love conquers all. Love is a Christian principle. Therefore, I could justify what was going on, that he was coming at this from a place of love, and so was I.
Sometimes I see the teenage Jane when she's talking, trying to rationalise what's happening with Dan, telling herself a story about love. Her life is opening up and she wants to have a real experience. These big emotions are so attractive, so powerful, so idealised. I remember what that's like at 13, at 14. I think we all do.
The passion wasn't invasive because I'd done that before, so it wasn't something that was new to me. it felt like that was, I guess, the level at which I was comfortable being physical with someone, and something that I felt like was in the realm of my knowledge and experience, and that was enough.
But it didn't stop at kissing.
When our relationship turned sexual, that's when things felt really uncomfortable. But it was really confusing because there were elements of it that I enjoyed and made me feel closer to him, and that like he wanted me in a way that he knew he shouldn't be doing. I'm not even talking from a legal standpoint, but from a Christian standpoint. That to me was what the big thing was like, this is wrong in God's eyes, that he knew he shouldn't be doing it, but he couldn't help it because of how much he loved me and wanted me and was attracted to me. Our relationship, especially in the early years, was very fraught with a lot of we shouldn't be doing this and guilt.
Jane mentioned the early years there. In fact, she was with Dan until she was nearly 18. And at some point, her relationship with a man more than a decade older than her, who was also her youth group leader, went from being a secret to not.
I think we just hit a point where we were spending a lot of time together. I think I was 14, possibly 15. I think there was a strong suspicion that we were closer than two people who are just friends would ordinarily be. And so I think it got to the point where we just had to just come clean basically and say, hey, yeah, we're in a relationship. It's just like any other relationship. We love each other. We care about each other. We want to have a future together.
Was there pushback from that? Did anyone say, but hang on, he's 11 years older than you?
There definitely was. There was definitely some reservations, obviously, from my family, from his mother, from people in the church. And I knew that, but I don't think I was privy to any of the details. So I don't know who spoke to him.
So this is the bit that gets me. People knew about this? Potentially a whole church community? How can that be?
Was there someone overseeing this youth side of things? Like, was there a pastor or a priest? Or I'm just interested, did anyone pop up and be like, hey, can we have a chat?
Not with me. No one popped up to have a chat with me. I know my sister and my mum talked to me, but I was just very reassuring that everything was all above board and fine and, all very chaste and just a regular Christian relationship. Yeah, romantic relationship.
This makes sense. I can see how it would work. Jane's part of a big secret, a hidden sexual relationship, and she wants to keep it too. And keeping the secret makes her complicit, even though it's not her fault. Jane doesn't know who from her church may have talked to Dan about their relationship, but I want to know. Surely there was someone who saw a 14-year-old girl going around with a man so much older, who was the leader of her youth group, and challenged him about it. We'll spend the next few months trying to find someone from the church who is willing to talk to us about it. It's not going to be easy. These are painful memories for the people involved, even 30 years on.
Was he still allowed to do the youth groups, even though it was known that he was in a relationship with you? Or was he taken off them? Or
he was eventually. I don't know if he was taken off or if he stepped down. Eventually we went to a whole other church. I think that was near the end of our relationship though. I mean, we can definitely continue to go to that church for a good few years while we were in a relationship that people knew about.
I also want to know about the consequences for Dan. Was he able to walk away and move on with his life? Because for Jane, the following years were hard, especially when it came to building relationships.
I had 2 suicide attempts.
the first time, and that was off the back of relationships, right? Because I had such an idealised understanding of what true love was. You know, I believe because of what happened to me as a teenager that I have always been in search of this person who's obsessed with me, and that's not normal, that's not right. Like, so I have then had these relationships where I'm not getting that same level of attention and affection, and ultimately I sabotage them. Well, that's what I believe. And then once they're gone, it's like my world's fallen apart. He didn't just ruin my teenage years. I'm sitting here in tears and in ribbons about stuff that's happened to me because I grieved the life that I didn't have because of him.
Jane has built a good life for herself in the time since, with a family of her own. One of the reasons she's not using her full name for this podcast is to protect her children, so it's not the first thing that comes up if they ever Google her. She has a job she loves, lots of friends, a house full of pets. But at the same time, it's clear what happened to her when she was a teenager, that hasn't gone away.
As my nieces got older, I started to think, I hope they don't get caught up in something like that. You know, that wouldn't be right. But it wasn't really until I had my own children that I was like, if that was my kid, what the hell? Like, what the hell? And I was angry at my family. And I just would say to myself, I was a child. I was a child. I think when you're a teenager, you feel like you're an adult, like you're on the way, but I was a child. And I looked at my nieces and thought, if anyone went near them, I'd fucking kill them, you know.
When Jane told me she wanted to make a podcast about what happened to her, I had some reservations. Trauma's complicated. Reliving it, especially publicly, it's impossible to know how that will play out. But she's very clear about what she wants from this. Jane's seen Dan only once in the last 30 years, a brief meeting 10 years after their relationship ended. There were things she didn't say to him then that she wants the chance to say now.
I want to take my power back. I'd like to speak to him. I don't want to confront him, that's not the idea. I'd like to speak to him and for him to know the impact that his actions and his decisions have had on my life and on like lots of other people's lives as well. You know, for so long, my narrative was written by him, and I want to be able to speak to my own narrative. And I know that sounds like jargony buzzwords, but I feel like it's taken me so long to get to this point of understanding what happened to me was not my fault. That now that I'm here, I'm quite determined to make sure that I'm able to say that and that I'd like to say it to him.
I could hear in her voice that she was determined, that she felt sure she was ready. Whether she really was, I didn't know. As it turned out, there would be times along the way where both of us would wonder whether we ever should have started on this whole thing at all. One of the striking things about the letters that Jane has kept from the time is how these very intense, very adult ideas are mixed in with teenage gossip, kid stuff.
I even have a letter I wrote to Angela where in between talking about, you know, Mr. Simpson at school being a pain in the bum and Kate not talking to me at the moment, I just dropped in that Dan was on one of what he used to call a Jane fast, which was, you know, like not seeing me for
Like 40 days and 40 nights?
Well, I don't know. It was never that long, but, for a certain period of time, which just made me want to see him more. And then I felt like you fast from something because it's bad for you. You know what I mean? So it made me feel like a bit like a dirty little secret.
But that secret was something she shared with Angela. Next time on Dear Jane, Jane reconnects with her teenage best friend who has been waiting on her call for 30 years.
I really wanted to reach out to Jane, but I never did because I thought, this is extremely triggering and I don't know what's going on in her life right now. I just hope and trust that she will contact me when she's ready.
And then where we're coming up to now is a place that I have not been to in 30 years. I can only remember the one time specifically, but I couldn't say with certainty it was only one time. And I think I can remember the one time specifically because what happened was something I hadn't experienced before, and so it was new and shocking.
So I did lie for them. My job was to protect them, and so I did, and it's to my huge regret.
If this series brings up any issues for you, there is help available 24/7 on Helpline. Free call or text 1737. And for more resources, you can visit the show notes for this episode of Dear Jane. Dear Jane is a Spinoff podcast network production, written and produced by me, Noelle McCarthy. Thank you to everyone who spoke to us for this series. Our producer is Madeline Walker. Our executive producer is Toby Manhire. Story consultants are Alex Casey and John Daniel. Our sound recordist is Te Aihe Butler. Additional studio recording by Samuel Robinson. Our sound design and mix is by Mark Chesterman. Our original theme music is by Te Aihe Butler. Our graphic designers are Tina Tiller and Archie Banal. Our voice actors are Liv Tennant and Tom Clark. And special thanks to Kirsty Johnston for guidance on trauma-informed reporting. This series was made possible by support from New Zealand On Air.